We were running through the airport with two crying kids, one dying grandparent, and 40 minutes before our flight, when a woman in a blazer pointed at my family and screamed, "They don't belong here." What she did next turned our worst day into a nightmare. 2 weeks ago, my phone rang at 2:13 in the morning. No one ever calls at that hour with good news. It was my aunt. Her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. All she said was, "Your grandpa isn't going to make it through the week. If you want to see him alive, you need to come now." My legs gave out right there in the kitchen. Within 30 minutes, my wife Maria and I were throwing clothes into bags, waking our two kids, and trying to explain through tears why Daddy's hands were shaking. We didn't even bother with a hotel. We drove straight through the night from Houston to Dallas. 8 hours. 2 exhausted parents. 2 scared kids. And one final chance to say goodbye. By the time we pulled into Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, it was 4 a.m. We hadn't slept. The kids were crying. Maria was holding her chest trying to breathe through her anxiety. I was running on caffeine and terror. Maria had paid extra for TSA PreCheck for all of us. With car seats, medical papers for my grandfather, and 2 scared kids, we couldn't risk missing that flight. When we entered Terminal D and saw the PreCheck line, only 6 people deep, I felt relief hit my body like a drug. For the first time all night, I thought, we're actually going to make it. The kids stopped crying. Maria squeezed my hand. I lifted the stroller over the rope and rolled us into the fast lane like we had just escaped a war zone. That's when I heard her voice. Sharp. Loud. Confident. Angry. "Excuse me." The entire terminal turned. I looked up. And that's when I saw her. She looked like she walked out of a luxury real estate office. Perfect blonde bob. Oversized designer purse. Diamond cross necklace swinging against her chest. Cold eyes that scanned my family like we were criminals. She didn't speak to me. She pointed directly at my 6-year-old daughter and shouted so loud people 30 feet away turned their heads. "This line is for real PreCheck members. Not whatever scam you people are running." The word people hit different. My daughter froze, clutching her stuffed unicorn. My son buried his face into Maria's leg. And suddenly it felt like the oxygen got sucked out of the terminal. I forced my voice to stay calm. "Ma'am, we have PreCheck." I held up my boarding pass with the TSA logo glowing right there on the screen. She didn't even look. She stepped closer. Eyes wide. Voice lower. Harsher. "I've been on an HOA board for 15 years. I know how people like you sneak into places you don't belong. People like you." That's when I realized this wasn't about boarding passes. Before I could even respond, she yanked her phone out and hit record. "I just caught them red-handed, ladies," she announced loudly to her phone. "Cutting the PreCheck line with fake tickets. I'm calling this in right now." She zoomed in on my kids' faces. My daughter started crying so hard she couldn't breathe. My son screamed. And Karen, yes, I'll call her Karen, smiled. A TSA supervisor immediately started walking toward us because the entire terminal had gone silent. I thought, good. This ends now. I couldn't have been more wrong. The TSA supervisor introduced himself calmly. "Sir, ma'am, may I see your IDs and boarding passes?" My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped them. He scanned mine. Scanned Maria's. Scanned the kids. Then he looked up and said the words that should have ended everything. "Everything checks out. You're good to go." Karen exploded. "That's impossible." She lunged forward and tried to grab the boarding pass out of his hand. I know fraud when I see it. The entire terminal gasped. The supervisor stepped back and put his hand on his radio. And that's when Karen completely lost control. She reached into her purse, pulled out a can of pepper spray, and raised it in the middle of the PreCheck line. "If you don't remove them right now, I'll clear this entire line myself." Everything stopped. No music. No footsteps. No conversations. Just her finger resting on the trigger. My daughter screamed. My wife started praying in Spanish under her breath. The TSA supervisor didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just said very calmly, "Ma'am, put the weapon down." Now. She didn't. She raised it higher. "They're illegal. They're a security risk." That's when 6 TSA agents tackled her to the ground. The pepper spray went flying. People screamed. My kids were shaking so hard they couldn't even stand. Karen was zip-tied on the dirty airport floor, kicking, screaming, calling everyone racists while being dragged away. And just like that, the line reopened. Like nothing happened. Instead of sending us through the scanner, the supervisor turned to us and said quietly, "Sir, please follow me. We didn't go through PreCheck. We didn't go through regular security." He escorted us through a side hallway, past locked doors, into a private room with frosted glass and only one chair inside. My stomach dropped. I thought we were about to miss the flight. I thought maybe Karen had filed some kind of complaint. The door closed behind us, and the supervisor sat down across from me. With a face I will never forget. He folded his hands and said slowly, "What you and your family just experienced qualifies as a federal hate crime captured on camera from over 20 angles." My wife gasped. My ears started ringing. Then he said the words that froze my blood. "And what happens next will affect the rest of your lives permanently." The door behind him locked. Cut to black. 2 crying kids. A dying grandparent. A public meltdown. A pepper spray threat in the middle of airport security. And now, a locked TSA room. A federal supervisor staring me in the eyes. And the words I'll never forget. "This will affect the rest of your lives permanently." The TSA supervisor leaned back in his chair and slid a folder across the table. Inside were 4 brand new known traveler numbers. Permanent. Lifetime. I blinked at the paper like it was written in another language. "Sir," he said, "your entire family has been granted permanent global entry and TSA PreCheck for life. Effective immediately." Maria gasped so loud the officer outside the room jumped. Lifetime. Do you know how insane that sounded? People wait months. Years. Sometimes decades. We just got handed permanent clearance in a locked airport room like it was nothing. Then he added one more sentence that made my stomach flip. "And that woman, she's been doing this to families for a long time." We were escorted straight to the gate. No lines. No scanners. No delays. TSA agents carried our bags like we were VIPs. As we boarded the plane, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a security incident involving one passenger who will not be joining us today, we have several open seats in first class." He paused. "And a family aboard today went through something no one should ever have to face. We'll be upgrading them now as a small thank you for their patience." The entire cabin started clapping. Strangers were patting my back. A man slipped me $100 and whispered, "For your grandpa." Maria cried all over again. Happy tears this time. For the first time since 2:13 in the morning. I felt like maybe the universe hadn't completely abandoned us. Then I made the mistake of opening my phone. Karen's live stream had exploded. 1 million views. Then 2. Then 3. People had reposted it with titles like, "Airport Karen finally meets consequences, HOA President exposed, racist woman threatens kids with pepper spray." And then the internet did what the internet does best. They dug. They found videos of her doing the same thing at Disney World, Costco, a Chick-fil-A drive-thru. Always screaming. Always accusing. Always filming. Her own HOA neighbors were turning on her in the comments. Cynthia, we told you to stop this. You embarrassed the whole neighborhood. This is why nobody attends meetings anymore. Then came the final nail. Someone leaked her HOA board minutes from the month before. She had proposed a rule that any resident caught helping unauthorized people at airports would lose all community privileges. She was trying to turn her racism into official HOA policy. By the time we landed, she was finished. We made it. By some miracle, we made it. Grandpa held on for 3 more days. 3 days that gave him just enough time to meet his great-grandchildren one last time. When I told him the story, he laughed weakly and whispered, "So, a crazy lady got tackled so you could make it?" I nodded. He smiled. Then he closed his eyes and peacefully slipped away 2 days later. That should have been the ending. But the universe wasn't done. 2 days after the funeral, Maria's phone rang. Unknown number. Dallas area code. "This is Special Agent Rodriguez with the Department of Homeland Security. We need you and your husband at the federal building tomorrow. A vehicle will pick you up." No explanation. No questions. Just a dial tone. The next morning, a black government SUV parked outside my mother's house. Inside were 2 agents. And a man in a suit who introduced himself as the regional director of TSA. We were driven not to a courthouse, but to a secure hangar on the far side of Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Inside was a conference room with a wall full of screens. Every screen was playing a different angle of Karen's meltdown. The director slid one sheet of paper across the table. "Cynthia Harrington," he said quietly, "is hereby permanently banned from all commercial air travel in the United States. Effective immediately. Permanent. No appeal. Same list actual terrorists sit on. Reason given. Credible threat to aviation security, repeated hate-based incidents, weapon brandished in sterile zone." Maria laughed out loud. I couldn't speak. But then came the final twist. The twist that changed everything. Agent Rodriguez opened a laptop. On screen was Karen's husband. Pale. Shaking. Sitting in an interrogation room. The agent hit play. "My wife has early-onset frontotemporal dementia," the man said through tears. "She was diagnosed 18 months ago. The aggression, the paranoia, the racial obsession, it's the disease." The room went silent. "She doesn't even remember the airport anymore," he continued. "The pepper spray was prescribed because she wanders. We hid the diagnosis because of her HOA image." The agent stopped the video. "The U.S. attorney is dropping felony charges. She's being involuntarily committed to a memory care facility instead. The no-fly ban stays." Every ounce of rage I had carried collapsed. The woman who traumatized my children was dying, and didn't even remember doing it. The TSA director finally said, "You still have the right to sue. But her husband sold their house today to pay for her care. There's nothing left to take." Maria reached for a pen. She wrote a short note on the back of the no-fly order and handed it to the agent. "Please give this to her husband," she said. "Tell him we forgive her. And we're praying she's cared for with dignity." The entire room went silent. Agent Rodriguez wiped his eyes. So did I. 2 weeks later, we flew again. This time just for a family vacation. When the TSA agent scanned our passes, a message popped up on his screen. He smiled and stepped aside. "Right this way, sir. Family first." My kids skipped through the pre-check lane yelling, "Daddy, we're magic." And every time they say it, I look up and whisper the same words. "Thank you, Grandpa. We made it."